Leviticus tribe to make up for the firstborn of everything. God back then said the firstborn is mine. Firstborn of all animals, firstborn of all people is mine. In other words, you raise animals, the first one that's born from that sheep is mine. And every 10th one that passes underneath the rod, when they counted them, every 10th one was mine. And he took the Leviticus tribe as his, as the firstborn. He exchanged them for the firstborn of everybody. So nobody had to give their child at that point in time. But there was more Israelites than that. So they had to pay up. And if you get to reading in this, there's a price on everybody's head. And I'll say it now, a man's worth almost over double what a woman was. So I'll bring that up. I thought I would. Anyway, but yes, a man was worth more value than a woman. And but they had a value on everything. Age-wise, everything. There was age to age and everything in here that everybody had a value. So you had to redeem the firstborn. When you had a child, you had to redeem that firstborn one. You had to pay the tax. And it's the temple shekel. In other words, it's how much it weighed. Because the temple shekel might weigh different than the Roman shekel or somebody else's shekel, the amount. And you had to pay for that. But he took the Leviticus tribe and took how many there was and looked at Israel and how many firstborn there was and goes, okay, you still got this many over here. You guys got to pay. So they paid the tax. And where did that tax go? Where did that go? It went to the Leviticus tribe. It went to the priestly tribe. The priestly tribe is the Leviticus tribe. Do you remember me when we were talking about Moses when he was born? His mother was Leviticus and his father was from the Leviticus tribe. You may not remember, but I brought it up. Special stopped and said, hey, like I do him. He's from the Leviticus tribe and she's from the Leviticus tribe. They made a Leviticus child. So, and his brother was Leviticus. So, they became the priestly tribe. Aaron became the priest. And in here, his sons become his helper priests. Here, better get my, move back to Leviticus. Okay, here we go. And where are we? And what's happening in the Israel lives? What happened in the Israelites' lives last week at the end?
I got a question, which I didn't recognize Moses, what tribe is, because I thought they was all Hebrew. So is the 12 tribes all Hebrew?
Yep.
Okay.
They're all Hebrew. Okay, let's look back at where the 12 tribes came from. We kind of missed that when we did that section too. See, there's so much to miss doing this much at one time. Very much to miss. There's the 12 tribes of Israel, okay? 12 tribes. Joseph, of many colors, he had a brother, right? And he had 10 other brothers by another mother, right? Okay, there's your 12 tribes. And the Levites are included in this. But Joseph had 2 sons. And his sons got a double helping. So they got 2 inheritances from the father, Israel. So it doesn't really say it, but they're mixed in here. That's how this works. So, but the Levi tribe had its own, we'll see this when they go into the lands later on. They had their own towns. They had their own properties to raise their animals on. They received their living basically off of what we call the church today, off the tabernacle. All the things that were the money and all that went to raise them families. It talks about the offerings and how much they had those wave offerings. Have you heard of wave offering? There's a wave offering where they wave it in front of the Lord and it doesn't get burnt. That kind of thing goes to the family and also goes to the priests. Certain rules apply. There's so many rules that I couldn't possibly have remembered them all, even if I listened to them, because there's so many different. They do the sin offering and all these different offerings for different things. If something happened and they did something wrong and you didn't realize it until later, and then it became known, and then you had to do an offering for it. If you notice, the priest will take the offering of the flour and take a handful and throw it in the fire. Where's the rest go? That's how the Leviticus tribe lived. They got their food, they got their money, got everything from that. But they took care of the tent of tabernacle. They were the ones that set it up, tore it down. Now, the priests were the only ones that could go in and even do anything with much. To tear the tabernacle down, a priest would go in and take down that big old cloth in front of it, where the holy was behind it. And he'd take and put that over the thing, over the box, the mercy seat area. And they've got a whole list of how he tears it down and puts all that special stuff ready for them to do, because they aren't allowed to see. Even the Leviticus that was able to go in and move this stuff was not allowed to see it. If they seen it, they would die. It's quite the book. It has a lot of the what do you call laws that they're not supposed to sleep with their mother, their sister, on down the line. A man's not supposed to sleep with another man. I'm sorry, but they punish that by death in the Bible. And there's a lot of laws. And as we go through this, I know Bill won't talk much about it, but when we get into the do-over laws, Deuteronomy. When you think of Deuteronomy, you think of the do-over for the laws. That's an easy way. As soon as you see Deuteronomy, that's a retelling of the laws. It's a do-over for the laws. And he retells the laws, but he adds in property lines, living in cities, all sorts of things like that. Housing, which they don't have. They have tents. This I got a kick out of when last week I was listening to it and fell asleep I was laying on the bed, had light on, sitting there looking at it, and I went out when I was listening to it. Woke up, and I go, what did I miss? Back up where I am. They're telling of the tent, how it's made. God went through and particularly told him how to make the rings and everything to put it all together. And he put the people in charge that he wanted in charge to make it, and gave them the capability of doing this. He gave them a little bit of the Holy Spirit, little knowledge of how to do this and how to make gold and how to do this. So the Holy Spirit was always at work, but in different things back then. Just like they talk about, he brought some men that were well known and brought them in, and he gave them some of his spirit to help him. Moses cried out to the Lord, I need help. And Lord says, okay, bring these certain people in, and you're going to give them some of your spirit, some of your power. And so he gave them some of their power, and they were able to speak and prophesy. Okay, prophesy, does that mean they tell the future? Well, in the Old Testament, most of the time it does talk about that, but in the New Testament, it talks about prophecy being more a church thing, like I give you comfort. I can comfort you. I'd be really good at comforting you if I was a prophecy. Not the gift of prophecy of the Holy Spirit. Not a prophet. A prophet is like one of the teaching. Not teaching, ministering persons. They have 5 ministering persons. I'd have to look it up, but that is one of them in the Bible. It's in a chapter no, I don't remember that. I just looked it up about 2 weeks ago because I was reading a book and it started talking about the 5 gifts, and I go, where is that? So I looked that up. It's like preaching and teaching, and I can't remember the other, but being a prophet was one of them. So do we have prophets in today's world? Probably. But we don't really call them prophets. They're very good at doing the things prophets do. Anyway, I'll go back to the Old Testament. I get off on track. Does that ever happen around here? There's a squirrel around here to remind you of it. Anyway, we'll get back to Leviticus. Let's see if I can tell you a few stories from Leviticus that I haven't already thought of. Oh, he starts out with burnt offerings, but if you notice that Moses does most of the priestly things until the priests are dedicated in here. Moses was the first priest, as far as I'm concerned. They don't really call him that, but he does the priestly things. And there was quite a little bit of, let's start out with the tabernacle. They got the tabernacle at the end of the last book. We got it all made. It's all set in there. But it's not really set up, not ready to go. And Moses does that. He sets it all up. And then he has to consecrate this thing. How long, any guessing how long it took to do this? And how many bulls and whatnot died for it? I'm laughing because I'm thinking of how many some of it did. But anyway, it took them 12 days to do this. And they had a ritual each day to go through when they did this tabernacle, to consecrate it. And once it was done, God come down and was there. Okay, then he had to do the priests. And he did Aaron and put all the stuff that you talk about. Oh, there's a breastplate and there's a special undergarments and all this special stuff they had to have on. In fact, there was a special everything that Aaron had to put on before he could go behind the Holy of Holies to sprinkle a little bit of blood. That he had to take and sacrifice a bull, and I think it was a couple of a goat. I don't know. It was several other animals, and he had to do all sorts of things. And the bull was for him and his family, to appease their atonement, so he was holy, so he could go in and not die. And he wasn't supposed to drink any fermented alcohol before he went in. He would die. Later on in the book, you're going to notice that, if he has you read it, that they put bells on the bottom of their apron. Around the bottom they had bells so they could hear them moving when they went in, and they tied a rope to their leg. Do you think somebody might have died in there and they had to wait till the next time they went in and to pull him out of there? Yeah, probably. Because why would you put a rope around his leg? You wonder if something didn't happen. Because the rules are quite specific on everything you should be to be holy enough to get behind that curtain. And the high priest did that. And I want to say I didn't notice where they told you when, but they did give you a month and stuff for that. I think it's once a year. They go in there. And don't quote me on that one. I didn't look it completely up, but what it said there was told you a certain month, like 7th month, and certain day, and you went in there. But anyway, we had all sorts of offerings. We had grain offerings, fellowship offerings, sin offerings. It just kind of continued on down the line, and I mean, there's a lot to them. Guilt offerings. You feel guilty about something because you thought of it. Well, that's in the New Testament. He says he changed it. It was, if you think of it, you're guilty. So they kind of knew about it back then. Let's see. Sorry, I meant to go through, if I'd had time, and write down things. Oh, guilt offering. Oh, yes. Okay, the first time they went to fire everything up and was going to do everything, Aaron had endowed, they took his sons and put the breastplates on, got them all ready, and put oil on them, and did all this stuff to get them holy so they could do things. First time they fired up the old furnace to start doing the burning of offerings, they didn't use the recommended fire. God came out and burned them. They were gone. The first two of his sons. He had two more. And so God said, well, you got two more, let's do it. Not exactly like that, but two more. and he brought them up. And one of them turned out to be the next priest. Because before this book ends, I think at the end of Leviticus, Aaron passes. He passes somewhere here along the lines. I'm thinking it's towards the end of the book. When you listen to two books, it all starts to go. Anyway, but then, and where were we? Where are they located? Does anybody remember that last week? Where he's sitting, where they're at? Remember we had the golden calf? The golden calf, when he come down from the mountain and they'd built made the golden. Aaron had thrown, what did he tell him in one? He threw the stuff in the fire and out came the calf. And that can't be probably true. But anyway, he asked for all their earrings and stuff, and he made a golden calf. So God was going to, he burnt. He was mad. But Moses talked him out of it. Says, man, you just took these guys out of Egypt. We just traveled all this way, and you showed the world that you're so strong and what you've did for these people. Now you're going to kill them out now? You kept them, how's that going to work? Well, I'll make you a nation. No, I don't think that's going to work. That isn't going to be good. You did your promise. And he started going back on the promises, and oh, yeah, I did, didn't I? Okay. So can God be talked down from the mountain of fire? Yeah. Moses did it several times. Can God's mind be changed? Yes. But you must pray, okay, there's promises in this book. He promised us. So, the promises were healed? Yes, these promises are healed. So we need to have faith, but we can talk him down from that mountain. We will live for another day. We can't live forever. There's a king, Hezekiah, I think. Anyway, God come with that was when they had their prophets. And he talked through prophets. Well, the prophets went and told him, you're sick, you're going to die. because I don't want you to see your kids. I'm going to take all these people into captivity, and they're going to leave, and a lot of them's going to die. I don't want you to see your kids die. He was being nice to him. But he says, he turns around and he prays, look, I did all this for you. I've took down the high places. I've taken care of, I got rid of all the Asher poles. I got rid of everything. Oh yeah, we got to talk about Asher poles. All that stuff. And I've been, my heart's with you. And before the prophet got out of the garden, God told him, go tell him he's got, I think, 15, 16 more years, something like that. Go back. He's got that many more years. But he will see some of his kids die. So he talked him down off the mountain of killing him. Not killing him, letting him die. So Moses, throughout this, saved a lot of people. At one point in time, there was fire burning against them, and there was a plague. And they had not been good. They were whining in the wilderness and doing, I need this, I need that, they're very needy people. But I agree, if you ate manna for 40 years, you probably get tired of eating manna. But anyway, he told Aaron, take the censer, go down and give atonement for them. As soon as he gave atonement for them, the plague went away. So when they did these things, they really did do things. These atonements and all this stuff and this blood. Because at this point in time, the blood covered their sins until Jesus came. They didn't know that, but it covered their sin until Jesus came. And then it was forgiven. So, we're still kind of in Leviticus. Let's see. What's next on the atonement thing? Oh, yeah. Aaron's sons died. So, the new sons are in. Yep, the priests began their ministries. And, there is so many. If you were a priest, you'd have so many rules, you just don't know which end to start with, almost. And then the food, it gives the foods they can eat, and the toes, and the cud, and you had to have a split toe, and you had to chew the cud. You couldn't just have a split toe to eat it. So, anyway, and all the different, what fish you could eat and what things you could eat. They had a lot of rules. No, and I can't really see how it'd be hard to follow all the rules. It would be very hard. A way to worship Him, yes. They didn't know any difference. Mm-mm. He's trying to make them holy. Holy is be without sin. Yeah. Yeah, it's amazing how stiff-necked they were, because at one point in time, a bunch came. There were some leaders of them, and they came, and they were like, them's the good people, we would think, that are in charge of their families. And they came and carried on to Aaron and Moses, and Moses talked God down from burning the whole mess up again, sort of. And then they went over by their tent. He says they were over by their tents. They went to their tents and their families came out, the 3 leaders, and they said, get away from them. Something's going to happen. And the earth swallowed them. Yeah, they were all gone. And then fire burnt and killed the others later. But yeah, there's many stories. I was going to talk about the Asher pole. Okay, about you've heard of the pole with the snake on top? And actually the medical community uses this for a symbol because it is healing to look at it. And the snakes come in and bit them. And that was because they were grouching. He sent snakes in amongst them and they would bite them and they would die. And they asked Moses for something. Well, he asked God and God said, okay, make a bronze snake and put it up on top of a pole. Whenever they get bit, it'll look to that pole. In other words, you're looking to God to heal you. Is what I think he's trying to say is you're showing your, how do I want to say, you're obeying it and you're looking at the pole. And they would be healed. And then after a certain time, those poles should have went away, but they kept putting them up. And that's one of the things they took down. I think they called them an Asher pole, if I remember right. Yeah, in the wilderness, the last time Moses went, and they didn't have any water. God told him, go speak to the rock, and it'll give you water. Moses and you are supposed to go speak to the rock, and it'll give water. Got over there. Well, they were just hammering on him for water. Well, Moses has been told to strike the stone before, but he was told to talk to it this time. And they both struck it with their staffs, and water come from it. But God told Moses, you and Aaron are going to die. You will not enter the promised land because of what you did right there. You didn't obey me. He was kind of a tough God, but he did. And then we come full circle around. We've been in the wilderness for about 40 years trying to do these sacrifices and whatnot. And I'm sure they had them kind of down by then, or at least a general thought of it. And we come back around, we get to the Moabites and what was the other ones? I can't remember the other ones. We're going to enter into, we're going to finish up Leviticus. Let me look through here and see if there's any. Oh, clean and unclean. Let's talk about that. They could be clean and they could be unclean, and you had to do certain things to get clean. In other words, they sinned, so you got to do these certain things to get rid of it, or you touch something or whatnot. That was a big part of their rules. I don't know if you've all heard of that. Then we come around to the Day of Atonement. They do it a Day of Atonement. There's a whole list of stuff they did there. They had a lot of things. You weren't supposed to eat blood. That's a big deal. Okay, let's see if I missed anything before we leave Leviticus. Punishment for sins, there was that. Rules for the priests, they had a lot of rules, I mentioned that. I hate to go through those in by, because they are something. And then there's the appointed festivals. Let's see if I can go down through here. We have the Sabbath. What was their Sabbath? Seventh day, right? That would be yesterday. Would have been their Sabbath. Why don't we meet on Sabbath? We meet on Resurrection Sunday, first day of the week. That's when Jesus arose. That's when the first church got together. They might have not did anything on the Sabbath, but they did not use it as a holiday. They did not follow the other holidays. Think of Christmas, his birth. That was a pagan holiday. That was the sun, rebirth of the sun holiday. I think the early churches took those holidays and made them theirs so people wouldn't be tempted to go also to the pagan holiday and to their own holidays. I think that was one of the main reasons they did that. And they did that with Easter too. Easter would have happened to be a goddess of fertility of the Romans. Ista was the goddess of fertility. So we have bunny rabbits and chickens. What do you think of that? They have a lot of babies, don't they? Yeah, that's why the pagan world used those as things. And in our worldly holiday, that's what they use. But we need to remember what it's really about. Okay, am I getting towards the end? Nope, not yet. Okay, I had the Sabbath, Passover. You know what that feast is about when they left Egypt. Offering of first fruits, start of the harvest. Festival of Weeks, I'm not too much in on that one. I don't know all that one. It's in, if you want to look it up, it's in Leviticus 23. Festival of Trumpets. It's about the trumpets. They hammered out 2 trumpets. They used them. Do you remember them using them during when they took down the walls of Jericho? Okay, here's the trumpets. They made them along there too. They hammered them out. And they had they used those for the, all this big camp was not a mess. God had a way for this camp to be parked, the way for everything to be done. I mean, he spent a lot of time with them. He really cared. They didn't realize that. They had a hard time realizing it. But he had the tent of meeting in the middle. Surrounding it was the Leviticus tribe. And I'm sure I'm not doing the sound very good. I forget to turn it off like Bill. Anyway, Leviticus tribe surrounded him. And no one else was supposed to go near it. And then he had each tribe by themselves and their clans. There was clans within the tribes, and then there was family within that. That was kind of the social breakdown of it. But he had certain tribes parked here, here, and here, and when they got up in the morning, he had that tribe takes off first, this tribe goes here. He sent out tribes, and he had them count the fighting men. Anybody above 20 years old and not within an age range, not old, were fighting men. And he had them go through and counted all them. There was 600,000 fighting men. So probably you're talking 1.5 million people, maybe 2 million people. That'd make a big spot in the desert, wouldn't it? Especially camped out. But they had, and the directions were north, south, and east, and they parked them around this to protect it, because they had the fighting men. You remember, all these countries come out and going to battle with them, because they didn't want them. They thought they were going to take over them. Anyway, I'll continue on down the road. I forgot about that. There's a lot to forget about. I'm sorry. But, there's the breads and all that things. And as I already spoke, all these sacrifices, they might give a ephah, 2 ephahs of flour, and the priest would go like, take a hand, throw that in, okay, park that sack over there. That's where they got their food. They didn't work. They did this. Dangerous work, though. They talked about how dangerous it was for them because they were hauling this stuff. All right, I'm about done. Did another census at the end. Arrangement of the camp, I talked about that. Cool, I talked about her. Okay, we're already in Numbers. Okay, Numbers. Numbers is about the numbers, how many fighting men, they did that. Um, about the Levi family and some of the things about when they go into their lands, how they will possess lands and they will have this and they will have that. We'll learn more about that in the next one, in Numbers. Well, we're going to have to do some of Numbers next week because I'm not going to get through it all. Let's see. And there was more fighting amongst them. They did go out and take a land, took a kingdom, just went out and destroyed it. And come back and they didn't lose a man. But they understood God fights with them. And they got it. They didn't know it the first time they went into the promised land. This time they were ready. They took several kings. And in the Numbers story, there was a story of the donkey. I forgot to mention that. You know, the donkey where they try to go get the priest. And this is a priest that talked to God and sacrificed to God. And it kind of shows us that other people besides, he was talking to other people besides the Israelites. He talked to this one. He went and sacrificed 7 bulls. He had two kings that wanted him to take and curse them because they were scared of what they were going to do to them. They were really scared of the Israelites. Most of these kingdoms were very scared of the Israelites. They were huge, and they had God fighting for them. And in the end, he winds up blessing them, and because he goes and asks God, and God says, "No, no, no, no. You don't want anything to do with that. Leave that alone." And then he decides they offer more money and more this and more that. Take him to, was it 3 hills and show him? And he sacrificed 7 bulls up on each of these hills, and he still doesn't curse them. He blesses them. So there are other people out there that back when this Bible was written, that were worshiping God, sacrificing to God, and believing in God, and speaking with Him. So don't think the Israelites had a monopoly on it back then. There were others. Remember, the wise men weren't Israelites. They came because they had seen signs that he was coming. Well, back to Numbers. I really kind of get going around, don't I? Sorry about this. I should have been more organized if I'd got a little more time. Let's see. See if I can. We'll go. We're about done anyway.
If they was afraid, why are they trying to take Israel now?
Well, we live in a new age, and all those people that were afraid have died and are gone and don't understand God. Let's put it this way, the devil's working in this world. There's not much you're going to do about that right now. The devil's going to fight to the end. His place has already been made. And he's already lost. And he probably knows it, but he's going to fight to the end. He'd like to take as many of us with him there as he could. Yeah.
It wasn't successful for them, but the Jews had a lot of enemies then too. So.
Yeah. Well, the next chapter, where you start the next chapter is, they are on the edge of going there. Aaron has already passed, and one of his sons, during an uprising, They brought in the Moabites, had snuck women, got them to sexually, they pulled these men in and was starting to corrupt the men of the camp. And one of them came in the camp with one of their men, and there was an uproar, and God was starting to burn. And this priest, he ran in with a spear and shoved it right through, evidently, the back of that man, right through her, by the sounds of the wounds. And God said, he's the next one. He burns for my holiness. He wants this place to be holy. So he became the next priest. And anybody remember who the next leader is? Because Moses dies up on the hill. Joshua, yes. He asked for him to put somebody in charge to tell him when to go out and when to come back. And he put Joshua in charge. That's where we're at right now. To start next week, we will be there. And he sent out 2 people to spy out the new thing. He didn't send out 12. No, didn't work. 10 of them didn't survive after they got back. But anyway, hey, thank you, everybody. I'm about as arranged as I could get myself today. But I did enjoy reading it again. There's some things I'd forgot about. I'd forgot about the Moabite women and a few other odds and ends there. So it was a good refresher for me. Yes.